In this video, let's continue to talk about data types, and we are going to talk about date types while we are creating this last column, which is launch date column. Let's come back to our SQL Management Studio here, and let's open up a new query. So right click on the database that we're going to run SQL statement against, click on new query. Currently, I have the products table over here, and I have these columns. I want to drop the table, but before I drop it, I need to get the create table statement. So one way to generate it is to use SQL Management Studio. I right click on the table, and then here is the menu for create table as, and then I can choose create to, and then I can choose clipboard. When I choose clipboard, it's going to generate the create table statement inside my clipboard. So I'm going to click on it. Everything is in the clipboard. I can paste it over here. Don't worry about all of this. Let's delete it. You can see that we have the create table statement generated for me. I don't have to remember it. And don't worry about this on primary. We can delete it. And for now, also don't worry about this null thing here. I can actually delete them. Now that I have the create table statement, I can drop the table. Before we go any further, you notice that there's this square bracket generated by SQL Server Management Studio. When you define any database objects, including table here, we can use square bracket. I can point out one use case for the square bracket. For example, if I want my column to be with a space in it, let's say we have a column that is called gross amount, and the type is float. You can see that it is allowed to have a column name that is a space in between. But if you don't use a square bracket, it's going to show you the right squeaky line. It's not going to be allowed. Right? So if you have something like this in the column name, you have to use a square bracket. Now let's talk about date data types. There are, generally speaking, 3 different date data types. The first one is date, and that's what we are going to use for the launch date. Okay, so launch date, data type is date. What date represents is only the date portion of the date. Right? It doesn't include the time. To make it clear for you, I can come up with another column. Let's call it launch time. And now I can use another data type, which is time. So time is the opposite of date. Right? It has the time portion without the date part. Now, let's say I have another column that is called expiry date, and this I wanted to include both date and time. Then we're going to use the date time data type. So let's try to create this table. I highlight this, click on execute. Now the table is created. So I refresh the table. I should have all of the new columns over here. All right, so let's right click and edit top 200 rows. By default, all of the columns are not populated, therefore null is being displayed. Let's focus on the last 3 columns that we just added. So the launch date is the date without time. So let's say today is 2023 December 14th, and the time right now is 11:35:00. Let me copy this first and watch. When I click out, you see that the time portion is dropped. SQL Server automatically dropped the time portion because the data type of this column is date. It's date only. It doesn't actually want to include the time portion. Now, if I paste this thing over here in launch time, because the data type for the launch time column is time, so therefore this is not a valid data structure. If I click out, it gives me this invalid value for the cell, row number 1, column number 7. Right? Click on OK. We have to remove the date part. Then if we click out, you can see that it accepts the time. Now, expiry date, on the other hand, includes both date portion and the time portion. Therefore, I can paste this over here, and if I click out, it accepts it. So if I close this and try to open it again, so instead of edit top 200 rows, let's click on the select top 1000 rows. Although we have not learned about the select statement, we can use it to display the data that we entered. Now we have launch date, which only stores the date part. And then we have launch time, which only stores the time part. well, you can see there's 7 digits after the second, so it's very, very accurate. And then you have expiry date. Expiry date, you have 3 digits after the second part, so it's less accurate, but it includes both date and time. Okay, that's everything I want to show you in this video. I will see you in the next one.